how far can the law go into the bedroom? Some way. But I think your question is a bit deeper than that simple question and simple answer is concerned. And that's the subject of this particular lecture to come, which explores, as perhaps I've said already in my introduction, the uncomfortable feeling that we're in the course of something that in generations to come may look to have been a bit lopsided in some ways, and or maybe even worse, but it's completely incorrect politically for me to go any further than to put it in those somewhat guarded terms. And the last thing that I must do, and I don't do, is to understate the suffering of the victims of sexual attack, even when those attacks or assaults seem to be quite modest, judged by the standards of male-dominated societies of 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 years ago. But perhaps also the difficulty which your question identifies is not just how far the law goes into the bedroom, it's how far the law goes into people's minds. And the people railing against particular categories of sex offenders are people whose own internal thinkings would never be exposed to public view, because we're all expected to have, whether we enjoy or indulge in fantasies within our minds that may or may not get played out in the bedrooms of our real lives. We keep all those things secret and are allowed to keep those things secret, which does mark out this type of crime, not just in terms of the difficulty of prosecuting it, but it does mark it out, as I said right at the beginning, in the way that people approach it. The ordinary politician can say, I detest, abhor, reject the man who decides to invade another's house by burglary to steal his property. He can say that having never done it himself, having never expected to do it himself, and genuinely believing, as I think most people would, that the invasion of someone's dwelling for the purpose of stealing property for financial gain is a terrible thing to do. And the people so describing it can speak with completely straightforward emotions about the issue. As soon as you find people condemning people for what happens in the bedroom, it's totally different, because you do not find prime ministers or leaders of the opposition standing up in Parliament describing last night's fantasies, let alone last night's behaviour. And yet we all know that their fantasies and their behaviour are quite likely on occasions to have been as extreme as those of the people who they condemn often enough these days to substantial sentences of imprisonment for what they are caught doing. This is a problem, and I don't think we've begun to face it. But I say, not just because I have to, but because I also understand it and mean it, that an exploration of these difficult issues doesn't come without the need to understand, far better than was ever understood before, that the suffering of sexual assault is a serious and horrible thing, and likely to be something that affects you for the rest of your life and changes you, and indeed the next generation down.